right there. Okay, and then I'll turn this on and there. Okay. I think that's going to work, and if not, I'll come
Okay.
back and help you.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
First of all, I thank you, Carol, for inviting me here again today. This is a great honor. I always like to meet young people, young minds, keep my whole brain going. And I would also like to thank each one of you for reading my book. I hope you didn't find it sad or depressive because of all the tragedies mentioned in the book. The book was never meant to be catharsis. On the contrary, this is a story of a brave young woman, me. I was young once upon a time, who had lived through the atrocities of war and its aftermath with rather upbeat spirit. As a teenager, I was a passionate patriot, ready to die for the emperor. I was always outgoing and assertive, even when the empire crumbled and my whole life, everything that I had ever been taught and believed with all my heart, turned upside down overnight. I still somehow managed to keep my head up high. A friend of mine recently told me when I was having problems with my computer, which is quite often, he said, when in doubt, restart, which reminded me of the time that we were finally rescued from Manchuria and were shipped to mainland Japan with nothing but what we could carry on our backs. Because that's exactly what I did. I simply restarted my whole life from scratch because there was nothing in post-war Japan that I could hang on to. Japan was totally demolished, torn to pieces, as well as its people emotionally and morally bankrupted. So it was a little bit harder than clicking on the mouse to reboot myself. So where did I get the strength to reboot myself? There in Manchuria, my hometown. Growing up in a colonial city in Manchuria, at the peak of Japan's expansion in Far East, I grew up with an extra dose of pride and self-esteem, which in turn helped me survive through the hellfire of post-war Manchuria and the deep despair of post-war Japan. I wasn't about to give in and sit and cry. So it is indeed my Manchurian legacy that helped me through in those hard times, and I'm proud of it. But not without remorse. The title of this book, Manchurian Legacy, is not my original title that I gave to my manuscript when I first turned in my manuscript to my publisher, Michigan State University Press. The original title was But Not Without Remorse, which is the very last line of my story. If I may read the last paragraph, it's in page 176. As I bid farewell to his picture, my father's picture, I was back in Japan at the time to attend his funeral. As I bid farewell to his picture, smiling slightly at mother's bedside, I looked at the mole on his face, the button that had beeped for me long ago, the bouncy soft button that beeped no longer. Rest in peace, Father, for I have long come to terms with it all and with myself, but all not without remorse. As I sat at my computer and typed in this last line, but not without remorse. I suddenly realized that this remorse was a driving force behind my writing this book. The remorse that I had kept deep within for all my adult life. The remorse for all that happened. The enormous human cost and my personal involvement in it. I changed the title, however, at the request of my publisher. They wanted me to use the word Manchuria somewhere in the title, so I came up with Manchurian Legacy, and they added this subtitle, Memoir of Japanese Colonist. And I think the change was for the better. It represents the contents of this book more clearly to the public. The remorse remained private. This remorse, of course, is shared by many thousands of Japanese of my generation. Since my book was translated into Japanese and published in Tokyo in the summer of 2003, I have gained many email friends from Japan. Most of those email friends were people who were born and grew up outside of Japan, like myself, in former Japanese colonies in Manchuria, Korea, and Taiwan. And what we shared or had in common was, of course, our everlasting longing for our lost hometowns. And one of those email friends sent me this book of pictures. May I put it here?
Yes,
And which button? This one?
yeah, maybe let's try. I had it there, so, there we go. Yeah.
There. This is a picture of, this book is a picture of the city of Dairen as it is today. This character here is pronounced Dairen in Japanese and Dalian in Chinese. And this is a picture, the part of the city of Dairen. Dairen is now a prosperous port city with skyscrapers and I can't show you every page, but highways. And well, it just filled with those tall buildings, totally unfamiliar to me. It's a total stranger to me. But I am glad that it's thriving without my help. And then another friend who lives in Dairen. Actually, he is a young American man from Wisconsin, and he lives in Dairen with his beautiful Chinese wife. He's an aspiring writer, and he lives there. And he sent me this packet of postcard featuring the city of Dairen as it was under Japanese occupation. And I had the exactly same thing sent from my family so that I can put some of the picture in my book. But this is a reproduction of the same thing. And I was amazed that this was Chinese government let people, this was printed in Beijing, China. I was amazed that the Chinese government let people make a reproduction of Dairen as it was under Japanese occupation, and tourists are buying them. And I brought this here because I want to share, although you have seen some of the pictures, I just want to share some of the pictures picture with my personal memories. This is in the book too. This area used to be the center of downtown Dairen, and this area and some of the surrounding buildings were actually designed and built by the Russians before Japan took over Dairen after winning the Russo-Japanese War of 2005. And so this is the close-up picture of this building right here. And this, to me, seems like definitely Russian design with this round dome. And this building was and still is a bank. It's, is it turned off? What happened? Did I?
Might have turned off the,
Huh?
it should be a power button, a big silver
Oh, here we go. There.
Oh, I must have touched it. Sorry.
It'll come back on now. There we go.
Okay. Where was I? Okay. This still is there, and across this park, facing this bank, it goes this way. Is this building? Goes like this, and this is also in my book, but I brought it here because this is the area I'm most familiar with. I grew up around this area. My house, when I was in my teens, my house, the whole block behind this hotel, this was and still is a hotel, it's still standing there. There was a whole block designated for the housing for some of the Japanese government officials. And my house was one of them, and it was a two-storied red brick house, and my room was upstairs. And somewhere in early 1970s, one of my classmates went to visit Dairen, and she went to my house and knocked on the door and visited with the people who lived in my old house. And she found out there were 3 families living in the house. But the friend who lives in Dairen now, he said that this whole area is filled with tall office buildings and banks. So my house is all totally gone now. But then there's a street right here, and right across the street from this hotel was this building. This used to be city office for the city of Dairen, and that's where my father used to work. It was a walking distance from our house. And you can see a street here going uphill, and you can see a building under construction. And this picture is the building of this completed. This was and still is a hospital, and this main building of this hospital was completed in 1926, a year before I was born, but it still is there, fully functioning as a hospital. And as I was growing up, I remember there were many more buildings added on to behind this main building, like isolation ward and a lab and the nurses' quarters. And then I brought another picture. This is the picture of my high school. This was also a red brick two-story building. This is still there too, not as a high school, but it's a foreign language school, a promotion from high school to college. And I brought it here because this shows a line of acacia trees. Every street in Dairen at that time had a wide sidewalk ornamented with line of acacia trees, like this one here and here you can see you can see the street with side line of acacia trees lined up. You can see right here too. These are all acacia trees. Acacia was a signature tree or flower because it flowers during the summer. The flowers thank you, that's all the pictures I want to show. Okay, do I turn up here?
Yes.
Right here?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay. Acacia tree. Oh, yeah. Acacia trees blooms during the summer, and the flowers are small white flowers bunched up like a miniature grape, and it hangs, and they fill up the whole tree, and it fill up the whole city of Dairen. It has a strong fragrance, and the city of Dairen was known for it. I guess that's enough for my reminiscence. And getting back to my email friends. Another email friend surprised me with some detailed information regarding the tragedy of the town of Franten. I remember this small town at the border of Japanese colony and the Manchukuo, which was ambushed by a Manchurian guerrilla soon after Japan's surrender. Do you remember? And all Japanese residents were hiding in the mountain. Okay, in that chapter I mentioned about a group of college students running from north, heading toward the city of Dairen, where they could find more Japanese. But they were caught in this incident and fell its victim because they fought back. Now, this email friend told me there was yet another group of students, not college students this time, but high school students. And I just couldn't believe it. He said that this group, a small group, 12 boys, all 16 years old, they were dispatched from Dairen to this small town. Now I couldn't believe it. Who would send a small group of teenage boys to fight against guerrilla? But he sent me copies of official documents, reports written by the survivors. Luckily there was only one casualty among those boys. They were able to escape with us. But to send a small group of teenage boys to fight against guerrilla is nothing but an act of madness. But that's what happens in a war. When a war comes to your home ground, madness takes over. You heard of kamikaze, and you know that, it's not just a nickname for Tokyo taxi drivers. Kamikaze, kami means God, kaze means wind. So put them together, kamikaze means divine wind. This name was created in the 13th century Japan when Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan, tried to invade the island of Japan. But as his huge fleet of warships lined up offshore of the island of Japan, a very timely typhoon came from nowhere and wiped out the whole fleet, forcing them to retreat. And it happened twice. So Japanese call this typhoon kamikaze, divine wind, believing that Japan was protected by gods. Now this name was revived and given to the special attack unit of Japanese Air Force. This special attack unit was formed by young pilots in high teens or early 20s, and it was formed toward the end of the Pacific War, when Japan became desperate. And they were just trained just enough to handle small airplane. And their mission was, as you know, to fly one of those small airplanes and dive right into U.S. warships coming close to mainland Japan. Suicide attacks. Madness. But I know each one of those young pilots died with conviction that their mission was sacred and divine. They died for the glory of war. To glorify a war is as much a crime as war itself. It creates a culture that promotes violence with blind passion, and reduces people's minds to my country, right or wrong, kind of mentality, which is dangerous and destructive. And that's the kind of culture I was born into and grew up with. I grew up believing in Japan's sacred mission of invading Manchuria and Japan and its subsequent war in the Pacific to save Asia for the Asians. And at the age of 17, I joined the Red Cross Nurse Corps to dedicate myself for this sacred cause. But as it turned out, war came to a sudden halt before I had a chance to die for the glory. When the world's first atomic bombs were dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Emperor Hirohito finally gave in and decided to surrender. Although he never used the word surrender in his long and complicated broadcast statement, somewhere along the line he proclaimed that he was ending this war, quote, in order to avoid further bloodshed, perhaps even the total extinction of human civilization, unquote. In short, he proclaimed that he was ending this war for the sake of humanity. How gracious of him. Did he forget, or were we supposed to forget, that he was the one, he was the absolute power, God, who had started this war and led his imperial army through the invasion of Manchuria and China and in its subsequent war in the Pacific? After all these years, there still are many arguments and questions as to the role of Emperor Hirohito in the war. But as you might have noticed, there are no questions or criticism of war in my book. It will be beyond my limitation. I could only tell, in my own words, what I have actually experienced or witnessed as a teenager in post-war Manchuria and as a young woman in post-war Japan. My personal sentiments, questions, remorse remain private. People say that you often write autobiography or memoir such as this in an effort to justify what happened in the past. I wonder about that. I know I was looking for something when I was writing this book, but I don't think I was trying to justify the war. I was also aware that some say that it was dog eat world of imperialism and colonialism, and Japan joined the race late in the game and was only trying to catch up with other major powers. But I was not interested in those hypothetical justifications. I was personally involved. What I was looking for was more personal. I was looking for something to release me from the sense of crime, the crime of the war that I had always thought I was a responsible participant of. Writing this book gave me an opportunity to see the whole picture in a totally different and much broader view, perspective. And I came to realize that as a youngster, I was nothing but what I was taught to be, what I was molded into by the military-run Japanese government. A young, innocent, and blindfolded patriot. I began to see myself not as a responsible participant of the war, but as a victim of imperialism and colonialism. A survivor of the generation that was sacrificed for the military purpose. And that realization lifted a heavy burden off my shoulders. I am now at peace with myself. I have lived my life to the best of my ability, against all odds. For that, I am proud of my life, but not without remorse. I can still see my father brushing off his tears with the back of his fist as he looked for the identities of those fallen college students. I can still hear the heart-wrenching scream of Mei Min, Aiya, when I told her about the police chief. I can still smell the fragrance of acacia that used to fill the whole city of Dairen. The fragrance of my lost hometown. When you have lived through a war, you're bound to be left with all sorts of regrets, remorse that eat your hearts out. But then you also remember, you also have some comforting and encouraging memories of the people who were there for you. And that's what this book is all about. Tragedies of the war, as well as love and support among the people who survived through the war together. Thank you again for reading my book. And if you have any question regarding the book or my personal life or whatever, I would like to share, if you'd like to share with me.
Okay, anyone with questions, raise your hand and remember to
Yes,
push the
please.
button. Yes.
Did you ever find out what happened to KUNIO?
Oh, Kunio? Yes. Yes, I found out. have always had, since he was my brother's classmate, I have always had his address and phone number. But by the time I got, my brother gave me his phone number and address, I was already married. So I never contacted him. And after so many years, after my book was translated into Japanese, that was the summer of 2003, I finally had enough courage to call him, because he was in Tokyo and I was in Tokyo helping the publisher. I finally called him, and I found out he had died a year before that year. He, as then I was invited to class reunion of his high school, and they told me what happened to him. He, as I was afraid, in this book, I was afraid that he would be drafted. He did get drafted, and at the time of Japanese surrender, he was at the Manchurian-Siberian border, and because he was captured as POW, and he was sent to Siberia. But he survived 2 years hardship and came back to Japan, and then he was able to continue his education, and he became a journalist as well as communist. And as I understand, there was a struggle within the Communist Party in Japan. One was supported by Soviet Union, and the other part was supported by Communist China, and his side lost out or something like that. But he was there in Tokyo all the time as a journalist. But I never had, and then he was married, and he had a daughter. But by the time I contacted him, he was gone. So that's what happened to him. Yes.
It was very hard for the soldiers that came back from the war to get jobs in your area of Japan where you were living when you came back from Manchuria.
For soldiers?
Yeah, it was very hard.
All soldiers in Manchuria were captured.
Yeah, they were all captured. Were any of them sent back to Japan? So I noticed that your brother...
Yes, my brother escaped. He was one of the very, very lucky ones. He escaped, and he's still around. He's still in Japan. He is, 90-something? His wife passed away 2 years ago. But he is still there, and he's with his son and his family. But he's just an exception. All soldiers were captured and shipped to Siberia as POW. Yes?
Well, first of all, thank you for coming. I know it's quite a trip over here. The Gulf War and conflicts in the Middle East have been my first taste of war and the patriotism and rhetoric that goes with them. I have learned many things and am saddened how easily one can be transformed into believing the rhetoric. Having been through everything with World War II and then moving to the U.S. and observing the Vietnam War and our latest war in Iraq, has the rhetoric been similar to that you experienced when you decided to join the Red Cross as a teenage girl? What can we learn from your experiences with war and those who promote it?
What's the question?
Just comparing the rhetoric in the U.S. with the Vietnam War and comparing it to when you were growing up and a lot of the propaganda that you experienced, and if you see some comparisons between the U.S. and the wars here and Japan and the wars and World War II. Does that make sense? Just on a governmental level.
When I was growing up, there was a war going on all the time. And I grew up with the military propaganda, which was to promote the war, justify the war. War was supposed to be a sacred war. And Japan was supposed to be a chosen country destined to lead the whole world. That's what we were taught. And emperor even had deity. Emperor was a direct descendant of God. And if you can believe it, that's what we were taught, and that's what we believed. But I don't think you didn't know that kind of propaganda. You are free to speak up, right? So it's a totally different situation. We were, as I said, we were blindfolded. We weren't supposed to, when I was in, I think I mentioned in my book, when I was in the Red Cross school, some of my books were confiscated. It wasn't illegal to read books from America or any other country, but it was discouraged, and it was encouraged to read just Japanese books and what Japanese government approved of. So we were actually blindfolded. We were indoctrinated. We were just brainwashed. I don't think you're growing up in that kind of situation. You're free to speak up. You can vote. There was no such thing as vote when I was growing up. We were totally controlled by government. So that's a big difference. Did I answer your question? Yes. Yes.
Did you ever have any regrets about marrying John and coming to the U.S.? Would you do anything differently?
Happy what?
Any regrets marrying John and coming to the U.S.? Would you do anything differently?
My regret is that I always felt sorry for, always felt that I have used him to get to the United States, to get away from the misery of post-war Japan's